Brad Pitt has lived in the spotlight for decades, hiding the truth about his closest relationships. Beneath the well-known parts, magazine covers, and public scandals, he held a personal story that, until now, he had never dared to reveal. In a rare moment of openness, Brad ultimately admitted that, out of all the women who had an impact on his life, one stood out. To truly understand her, we have to go back to the modest beginnings of a young actor who never thought love would hurt as much as it did. The production of Brad Pitt. Before becoming a well-known Hollywood star, Brad Pitt was merely William Bradley Pitt, a young man from Shaune, Oklahoma, who was raised in a traditional Christian home where discipline, hard work, and modesty affected every part of his early life. Brad was born on December 18, 1963, and grew up witnessing his father operate a trucking business and his mother assist difficult students as a school counselor. He lived a quiet, ordinary life that was very different from the glitz he would eventually encounter. After the family moved to Springfield, Missouri, Brad found comfort in the great outdoors, which he later dubbed Mark Twain Country and Jesse James Country. Throughout his high school career, he excelled in debate, athletics, and theater, early signs of the confidence and self-discipline that would thereafter define his career. In 1982, he majored in journalism and advertising at the University of Missouri. But despite his best attempts, he quickly became fixated on films. He made the shocking decision that, with just 2 credits left to graduate, family, he packed his car and drove to Los Angeles in 1986, determined to follow an apparently unachievable dream. Life in Los Angeles was hard. To make ends meet, he drove limos, delivered refrigerators, and even waited on street corners while posing as a huge chicken. He studied acting at night, progressively perfecting the craft he believed would one day free him from the nagging doubt of his early years. His early parts were unremarkable. A few lines from TV shows like Growing Pains and films like Bit Parts are rarely remembered, but Brad persevered in spite of the uncertainty that surrounded every decision. Then, in 1991, everything was different. Before making a fleeting appearance in Thelma and Louise as the smooth-talking drifter J.D., he was a struggling unknown, Hollywood's current obsession. He became well known in an instant, but Brad would find that fame did not make love any easier. If anything, it made matters more difficult. Juliette Lewis was his first sweetheart to leave his mark. When Brad Pitt first met Juliette Lewis in 1989, he was still a long way from becoming the global idol. 2 teenage actors who were eager for a break were compelled to work together on the set of Too Teenage to Die. But what had begun as a business collaboration quickly turned into something more passionate, raw, spontaneous, and painfully genuine. Juliette was just 17 years old. Brad is already in his mid-20s. But their bond was inescapable, explosive, and fast. During a period marked by uprising, grunge, and their emotional irresponsibility made the two of them ideal for the restless pulse of the early 1990s. They were inseparable. They lived and worked together and had a youthful enthusiasm that made everything appear greater than life. Afterwards, they co-starred in Every Scene in California in 1993 was influenced by their off-screen relationship, which gave their performances a degree of focus that audiences could detect. But beneath the enthusiasm was pandemonium. 2 young individuals navigating the confusion, pressure, and celebrity of early adulthood. As Brad's career took off, Juliette struggled with substance misuse, personal issues, and the burden of unanticipated celebrity. Their universes began to drift apart once they were in sync. Years later, Brad would confess to Vanity Fair, "I still adore her. That individual is a real genius. That was one of the best collaborations I've ever had." Even decades after their breakup, their comments show how much Juliette affected him. She brought up memories of a time when he was hardened by fame, scandals, and expectations. She was the one he loved when he was still growing as a person. But Juliette also carried the scars from their romance. In later interviews, she hinted that Brad may have been egotistical, preoccupied with his own ambitions, and battling inner issues during their years together. Their breakup was not cordial. It involved distance, misunderstandings, and the pressure of everyone suddenly paying more attention to Brad than he wanted. Even though they didn't stay in touch, he never disregarded the years he spent with her. Brad's relationship with Juliette Lewis was more than a passing phase. It all began with her. Even today, when he hears her name, it's the first time he truly understands what it was: the loss of a loved one. He was ready to begin a life with Gwyneth Paltrow. Brad Pitt's trust in the future was sparked by Gwyneth Paltrow, even though he initially fell in love with Juliette Lewis. In 1994, when they first met on the C7N set, Brad was already Gwyneth was the next big thing in Hollywood and a rising star. Long before the cameras stopped filming, even the actors and staff were murmuring about their immediate and powerful chemistry. What Brad discovered in Gwyneth is unlike anything he had ever come across. Stability, intelligence, sophistication, and a friend who shared his objectives, his own. By 1996, he could no longer hide her importance to him. As he accepted the Golden Globe for 12 Monkeys, Brad acknowledged Gwyneth as his mentor, angel, and the love of my life. Cameras were not considered in the collection's design. That same year, he proudly proposed. The engagement was seen as a natural next step by everyone in their local area, especially Gwyneth's father, Bruce Paltrow, who adored Brad and believed he would be the ideal carer for his daughter. But the same characteristics that drew them together also led to their dissolution. Gwyneth later said that she wasn't ready to get married. She was just 24 years old, balancing a fledgling career, celebrity, and expectations. She said that she was too young, too uncertain, and too overburdened to commit to such a big life. Brad, on the other hand, was optimistic. He believed they were meant to last and loved her very much. When they called off their engagement in June 1997, Hollywood was shocked, but Brad and Bruce Paltrow were the most upset. Gwyneth would later assert that her father was heartbroken by the breakup because he believed Brad was the one. Years later, Brad still spoke lightly about Jane, telling her in 2022, "It's lovely to have you as a friend now. The world has never stopped supporting Jennifer Aniston." The Brad Pitt was already one of Hollywood's most sought-after stars when he first met Jennifer Aniston in 1998. At the time, she was America's favorite girl next door. Their managers had introduced them as friends years earlier, but when the time came, their first real date felt comfortable, easy, and strangely, inevitable. They weren't two well-known individuals performing in public. It was only Brad and Jen, two people who shared a sense of humor, smiled easily, and found comfort in each other's company despite the chaos of stardom. Their marriage on July 29, 2000, was referred to by Hollywood as the perfect union. Their Malibu wedding, complete with fireworks, candlelight music, and 50,000 flowers, came to symbolize all that everyone held dear. Brad Pitt and Jennifer Aniston were the obvious couple for a while. It seems genuine. They collaborated to form Plan B Entertainment, mirrored each other's energy flawlessly, and accompanied each other to award shows. Later on, Jen confirmed that it was a sincere collaboration based on trust rather than a self-serving endeavor. But behind the public perfection, strain began to build. Jennifer was juggling persistent worries about childbearing in addition to beginning a career in film and filming Friends. Brad was taking on difficult roles, such as Mr. and Mrs. Smith. After a creative evolution he could not ignore. They both want a family, but not at the same time. Additionally, love, especially deep love, can be strained by difficult timing. When they announced their breakup in January 2005, they insisted that nobody was at fault. But after Brad and Angelina Jolie's connection became public, the world refused to let their story come to an end. Jennifer later claimed to have seen photos of Brad and Angelina in Kenya. Particularly a few weeks after their split, it wasn't one of her year's highlights. Even though she personally experienced the agony, she handled it with grace, which made the audience love her even more. Despite everything, Brad and Jen were able to rekindle their relationship. He attended her 50th birthday celebration in 2019. "Brad and I are buddies," Jen subsequently said during their friendly reunion at the 2020 SAG Awards. "Nothing at all unusual is present." Their tale did not conclude in flames. It becomes a soft, durable material. The too strong feeling, Angelina Jolie. When Brad Pitt joined the Mr. and Mrs. Smith set in 2003, he was still wed to Jennifer Aniston. Neither of them had expected the synergy that resulted from working with Angelina Jolie, who had no idea that his life was about to enter its most turbulent phase. After a few months of filming, Jolie later admitted that, for some reason, she started to look forward to her work. Brad also felt it. Dramatic scenes, an unexpected partnership, a connection made over long days, and an adventurous energy that drew them in. In January 2005, Brad and Jennifer announced their separation to the public. At that point, rumors were already circulating. In early 2006, Jolie said she was expecting Brad's child after adopting Zahara that summer. Their family grew rapidly. Maddox, Zahara, Shiloh, Pax, and the twins, Knox and Vivian. They were known as Brangelina, or the ultimate power couple. They are respected for their generosity, big family, and attractiveness. It looked perfect from the outside. On the inside, though, pressure was silently building. Brad battled alcoholism, work-related exhaustion, and the strain of raising 6 kids. Children who are constantly under public scrutiny. Jolie struggled with her own physical and mental health, the enormous responsibilities of parenthood, and earlier traumas. More than their ability to heal one another, they were two strong forces operating at opposing rates to maintain a family unit. Everything collapsed on September 14, 2016, when traveling in a private jet. Brad denied physically hurting the children, but Angelina claimed he had been acting aggressively toward her, drinking and cursing. But the details of what actually happened are still up for question. The FBI and Child Protective Services conducted inquiries and did not press charges, but the damage was irreparable. A few days later, Jolie filed for divorce, citing the family's health as the cause. The result was one of the most painful public breakups in Hollywood history. Years of court hearings, custody battles, accusations, and animosity that would not go away. Their differences persisted even after they were formally declared single in 2019. Their custody agreement wasn't finalized until December 2024. The dispute over their French winery, however, is still ongoing. The final confession, the love he never got over. After decades of silent, sad marriages, painful scandals, and attempts to start over, Brad Pitt finally allowed himself to speak candidly about the women who affected him. He had known heartbreak, passion, assurance, and turmoil. He had been involved in romances that influenced entire eras in Hollywood. But as he reflected on everything, the celebrity, the mistakes, the moments he couldn't go back in time, he admitted that only one love lingered with him in a way he couldn't quite shake. He never denied that something inside of him was awakened by Juliette Lewis, but it wasn't the wild, euphoric beginning. It had nothing to do with Gwyneth Paltrow's public fairy tale or the near-marriage experience that was ruined by timing. Jennifer Aniston, even though everyone still thinks their relationship was perfect. Brad's admission was far more complex and relatable. In private conversations with those closest to him, he saw Gwyneth Paltrow as the love who taught him the value of dedication, Juliette Lewis as the love that shaped his youth, and Jennifer Aniston was the person he felt most comfortable around. But when asked whose love never truly left him, he said something that startled everyone. "I learned everything by losing her, and the one person I wasn't ready to lose was her." He was referring to Gwyneth Paltrow, whom he called the love of my life. He was made public in 1996, long before the industry twisted him into a cynical version of himself. In their relationship, she was the one who had never experienced betrayal, accusation, or resentment. The one that ended not because they failed, but rather because young people typically don't understand the weight of eternity. Brad admitted that he didn't realize what he had until it quietly disappeared without anger or malice. Gwyneth eventually moved on from him, got married twice, had a kid, and turned her attention to entrepreneurship and well-being. Both of them were too young to be carrying such a large object. Brad valued her path, even admiring it, but her place in his heart remained permanently and silently marked. Love leaves wounds that time cannot heal, even for a famous person like Brad Pitt. After decades of silence, his disclosure serves as a reminder that the heart remembers its